Hello everyone, it's about 7 a.m. in London on a Saturday morning, and last week I read this book, which is How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen by David Brooks. So this is one of those ones I've seen a few times in a bookstore and picked up and thought, looks interesting, I'll get it next time. Next time eventually came round. Really glad I read it. Let me tell you a bit about David Brooks. So, if there is anything about him in here, he's got a New York Times column, about 800,000 readers. He's a journalist, and this is what it says about the book on the back. A manual for sustaining friendships and having better conversations. Brooks offers many thoughtful and useful suggestions. I raced through the book, which is well structured and engagingly written, and afterwards found myself making a greater effort in conversations. I made tiny changes, and yet the difference was transformative. That's probably the bit I read in the back that made me decide to eventually buy the book, because think back over your lives, certainly when I think back over my life, and the best friendships, the best times, even the most fun, it wasn't anything other than being really deeply connected to a person, having a really nice conversation, a funny conversation, just being able to get somebody. It's like you go through life and there's very few people who seem to really get you, who seem to really understand you. And when you find them, they become your best friends, usually. And something else has happened recently where I thought, you know, I always used to think that convenience played a massive part in who becomes your best friend or your lover or your or whatever. You know, it's the people you get to see most often. So when I was growing up, my best friend lived 5 minutes from me, so I was able to be over at his place every day. We'd meet up when we wanted to go out because we were local to each other. But there are some exceptions to that. I was just thinking, there's a friend I know who I've seen maybe 3 times in 20, 25 years, but every time we meet up, we get along remarkably well. So maybe proximity isn't absolutely essential, but it always helps in being seen and seeing another person. What is being seen anyway? I think it's like being understood and feeling like somebody's actually listening to you, somebody's actually there for you. One thing that popped up in my mind as well when I was about to buy this book is I know some people who ask all the right questions, make all the right noises, make all the right faces, but it's so constant and it's so universal, like they do to every single person they meet, and you just think it's completely disingenuous. You know, they can't possibly be that interested and ask the same questions in absolutely everybody. And then you just wonder, when I'm not there, what does this kind of person say about me behind my back? Maybe I'm paranoid, I don't know. But anyway, getting back to the book, I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. A couple of things that pop out before I flick through the pages. Some distinctions that David Brooks makes in the book are what is a good conversationalist. This was new to me, this was good. So he said a good conversationalist isn't somebody who can just tell really great, entertaining stories. That's a raconteur. Yeah, you're there, you're taking up all the spotlight. Um, you're on the stage, so to speak. You're an entertainer, a raconteur. You're not a conversationalist because the other person isn't being seen. And then there's the other one who always has something to say, who knows about everything, who can always tell you what this is and what that is, and has a lot of knowledge. That's not a conversationalist either. That's a lecturer, he calls it. And going back to taking up the spotlight, David Brooks calls it being an illuminator, somebody who lights up other people's world, shines the light on them, and being a diminisher, somebody who takes that away from the other person. So illuminators walk through the world, make people feel heard, make people feel good. And it's not just about making people feel good, you can make a person feel heard and really change their lives. Um, one of the author's friends has cancer, and she has told the author that it's so nice for somebody just to come along and treat me like a person and make genuine compliments. And if they buy me gifts that aren't there to make my cancer journey easier, but they're just nice gifts. So that's seeing a person. Um, and then there's also, I forgot what they call it now, there's something in there which he refers to, is called slant. Can you tell it's 7 in the morning and I haven't slept much? I'm not as energetic as usual. But never mind. So slant is sit up, lean into the person. You know, you can listen with your body as well. If you're speaking to me and I'm like, you know, I don't give a damn, right? Lean into the person, attend to the person. So sit up, lean into the person, ask questions. So listen to what they're saying and ask questions about what they're saying. You know, not that sort of everything has to be a question. That goes into the sort of the trying too hard, the formulaic, the disingenuous again. N is slant. Was it nod? Just nod. You know, use your body to show that you're listening. Not like this. And T is track. Track. Watch the person with your eyes as well. You know when you know somebody's really captivated by you and they're all on you, the eyes, everything, and the reactions, and you love it, and they love it too because they're actually genuinely involved. Um, in the last chapter, David talks about how he's still trying, and how now he's aware of these things. He looks back over conversations he had and thinks, "Oh, they said that. That was them revealing something which I should have, you know, focused on." To you have to help people to converse as well. This is the skills of a good journalist. He's a journalist as well, isn't he? Of a good journalist or a good interviewer or a good talker or a good conversationalist is somebody who helps the other person to come out. And a lot of the time, depending on the situation, it's not listening at all. Somebody might be suffering from something, might be going through something, and then seeing them is no conversation at all. You're just there for them. You know, you just witness them going through it, and you stay by their side. And some of the stories he uses to illustrate this are really powerful stories. There's a story about a guy who lived through a genocide, and then went, you know, emigrated to America, escaped the genocide, and it wasn't in Palestine. This was a guy. I think it's the Rwandan genocide. This one. That's an interesting story, the Rwandan genocide. So the two tribes involved there, it used to be it was a British colony, and basically they'd always got along really nicely, really quite well. You know, intermarriage was common and everything, but one of them tended to have slightly darker skin. So the colonialists, it might have been the Dutch, it might have been the British, I'll have to check on that. The ones with the darker skin, they basically treated them more harshly, gave them fewer rights, and the ones with the lighter skin, they treated them better, and gave them more rights, and actually made them, for the first time, quite abusive to those with the darker skin. And that's what eventually led to the massacres that happened there. But anyway, that's another story. But this is a really good book, and some of the writers he quotes as well have got such beautiful writing. There were lines in here that I read and I had to just stop and read it again and again. So if you just like good writing as well, that's amazing. Getting back to the guy who escaped from the genocide, so somebody else has written a book about him, and he talks about how that author interviewed and got to know him and actually went back to the scene of the genocide with him and wrote a story about him. But even after all that, remained intensely curious about this guy. So part of the whole seeing a person deeply is just having that curiosity. How do you get that curiosity? You know, and isn't it wonderful to encounter a person who's curious about you like that? It's a really good book. It's certainly one. I do this again and again now. There are books, and I say it's certainly one that I'll go back and read again. And this is probably one of them. Maybe not as soon as I'll reread some of the others I want to reread, because it's one that you read, you take ideas from, and you might find yourself trying to apply those ideas. I've had some really nice conversations that I thought would be really difficult, but I haven't been. They've actually been quite revealing, and in one case brought me much closer to a person. Let me read you a bit more of the back of the book. A superb new book. To know another person is to know their social location, Brooks writes, and to listen deeply to what they are saying. That's by the New European. Original and useful, Brooks is a chatty, likable guide. Joe Moran, TLS. what's that, Times Literary Supplement? I'm not sure. A hands-on guide to making meaningful human connections. Kirkus Reviews. How to Know a Person offers a series of well-wrought stories and punchy reflections on relationship building. It's packed with tips to try out, from asking better questions to becoming more conversant with the complexity of your own identity. Oh yeah, so one of the things he talks about there in there is therapy and the limits of introspection in terms of getting to know yourself, because the models that you have to deal with the world were constructed by the same person who's trying to see what's wrong with those models. It's quite difficult because they're looking through those models, so you have blind spots on yourself. One of the stories he tells in there is about a therapist and how she succeeded with a really difficult patient who, on the first few snippets of information, you know, if I met this guy, I'd think, what an absolute asshole, right? But then eventually, through conversation and patience and good seeing and listening skills, this guy turned out to just have a lot of trauma that made him this asshole, that he kept hidden from the world. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to uncover somebody like that, to discover somebody like that, and maybe stop them from going around and shitting on everyone because of their own insecurities? Really nice book. I'm going to read you a bit more from it, and I don't know how long I've been going, but I'll shut up after that. And obviously I'll recommend the book. I was hesitant there to give it a 10 out of 10, but then I haven't read many other books like it, so I didn't have much to compare it to. And in my head there's probably questions saying, well, what did it give the last book like this? Was that a 10 out of 10? Maybe, you know, you should compare it, but I don't think I've really read many books like this. I would give it a 10 out of 10. It's quite funny as well, this guy. One of the things he talks about on here is how he made an effort to speak to somebody on an aeroplane rather than just sit there with his headphones in, and how wonderful it was. And the guy really just wanted to talk. And research tends to show that people like to be spoken to, people enjoy conversations, but we hide from conversations. Have you seen that new thing? It's going around a lot on social media, and you've got the three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And then there's a fourth monkey sitting on his phone, and it says sees nobody, hears nobody, speaks to nobody. I thought that was quite funny, and quite good as well. What was I going to do here? Is there anything about David in here? I don't know. Even though I just wrote the damn thing. Anyway, really good book. Highly recommend it. I'll probably read it again. I hope I've actually pressed record on this. A Manual for Our Times. Everyone should read it, by Matthew D'Ancona. And there you go again. I'm going to go have some breakfast.